All right, everyone. Thanks for coming. We're going to get rolling here. Dr. Brent Steenbarger and myself, Empowering Traders. This particular event sponsored by Stage 5. I'm going to talk about them in 1 second. They have this Empowering Traders series, this one on trading journals. So let's get started. I want to first thank Stage 5. They've done a great job in not just promoting this event, but as brokers. And I want to tell people, kind of on a side note, I don't collaborate or do anything with brokers unless I have the chance to meet and know the guy who owns the company. And so Anthony Giacomin, I've got to know over the last several months, and it's just one of those kind of simplistic things. If you know someone and they're likable, chances are so are their brokers, and they are. Chances are it's effortless to refer people when they ask me for a broker or about a broker. And I don't get anything from it. I don't want anything from it. I just want to have that effortless handoff. And that's what Anthony has been about. And so he's here. He's not going to check because we didn't want to confuse people with too many people talking. And so he's around. He's able to see anybody's questions or comments. So if you have any brokerage questions as we go through this event, make sure you pop them in there. He'll see them and pick them off as we go along. Brett and I are going to keep time open at the end of this webinar for a Q&A. So if you do ask a question and it's not answered, we're not ignoring it. We'll circle back to it as we get through it. Because this is a Stage 5 event, I want to talk more about Stage 5 at the end and some of the services that they have with Sierra Charts, which I think are pretty great. But because this is a brokerage sponsored event, I'm going to read this disclosure. Trading futures and options on futures and foreign currency involves substantial risk of loss and not suitable for all investors. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your circumstances, knowledge, and financial resources. You may lose all or more of your initial investment. Opinions, market data, recommendations are subject to change at any time, and past performance is never indicative of future results. A lot of times these risk disclaimers and disclosures are boring and a lot of legal language, but if you don't know what risk is, how the heck are you going to manage it? And that's a real important part of this business. So like I had said, Anthony is here to answer you guys' questions. If you have any brokers' questions, we'll talk a little bit more about Stage 5 at the end. But let's just get rolling back into part 1 and 2. We're going to have 3 parts in this webinar. Dr. Steenbarger is going to do the first one. I'm going to do the second part. And the third part will circle in a tool that I created and tell you more about as a way to implement some of the things we're going to talk about and so on. I'll let Dr. Brett kind of introduce himself. All I can tell you about Dr. Steenbarger is not only he's an author and has a pretty substantial Twitter following. He's been writing blogs on Twitter I've been following him since 2008. He's probably been doing it before that. But one of the rare and unique persons in the industry. He's not out selling anything. He works for a lot of prop firms in the past and present. But he's truly someone who likes to help people, period. One of the only guys I did a live event with Brett a few years ago, and he gives out his email address to people. I'm like, wow, this guy really reaches out and is pretty genuine. One of the things, and I don't think Brett knows about it, but I started in a prop firm in 2000. And soon after that, we had found that some other firms in the city were hiring psychiatrists, which Dr. Brett was one of. And we got the idea to bring on someone. And the difference, though, and I'll shut up and let Brett talk after this, was Dr. Brett has and had trading experience. So he was able to help people from the psychology side, but the trading side, and the guy that we had brought in wasn't as well versed like Dr. Brett is. But I've got his slides, so I'll show him. We don't have to hand back and forth. His mic has been opened. And we did a sound check and a screen check. Everybody is good to go. We are recording this if you have to leave early. Again, Anthony from Stage 5 is here to answer any brokerage questions as we go through this event. We'll talk more about him at the end. But Dr. Brett, you want to take it away?
That sounds very good. Thank you, Anthony. I don't know. You guys are trying to mess with my head with 2 Anthonys here, but I think I can keep it straight.
Any more, we might have to call the police.
There you go. Or yes, exactly. But thank you very much to Stage 5. Thank you very much, Anthony, for bringing me on board to share some ideas about best practices in keeping a trading journal. And what you see here on the screen is not only my name, but the URL for my blog, the Trader Feed. And on that blog, you'll be able to find my email address. And so if you have questions about today's presentation, please feel free to get on the blog, get my email address, and shoot me a line. I will be delighted to help out. We'll be talking about keeping a trading journal, but that's really just a means to an end. The end is to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. If that's in the trading world, that's wonderful. If that ends up being in some other sphere of endeavor, that's wonderful also. I'm a psychologist. I teach in a medical school. I work with people in financial markets. I'm also involved as a director of student development at an organization that puts together study abroad internships called Connect 123. And so I work with people on developing their potential. That's what I do. And keeping a trading journal is just one means by which we develop our potential as traders. So we'll take a look at best practices and what do we see in the trading journals of people who are very successful. Can we go to the next slide? All right. First, there are two types of trading journals, or I should say, two functions for trading journals. The first is journaling market opportunity. Journaling markets or stocks, whatever we're trading, and how do they set up? How do we see opportunity in the marketplace? That's the first purpose. The second purpose is our trading performance. We journal our performance. How well did we take advantage of this opportunity that we saw in the marketplace? How well did we enter our positions so that we have favorable risk reward? How well did we size our positions? How well did we manage the positions during their life? That's part of the second area of journaling. These are two facets of our learning processes as developing traders. And what has always struck me, working with very successful portfolio managers at very successful hedge funds, where the minimum portfolio size is hundreds of millions of dollars. They are doing this day after day, week after week, tracking market opportunity and tracking their performance in taking advantage of that opportunity. That's what keeps them developing, keeps them growing, and keeps them engaged in markets. Can we take a look at the next slide? All right. So let's talk about the first area, journaling markets themselves. If we're trading stocks, it would be journaling the stocks that we trade. As many of you know, I work with the developing traders at a firm called SMB. And a big part of what we teach the developing traders there is how to review markets, how to review how opportunity sets up so that we can become more and more consistent in taking advantage of that opportunity. Now, before I get into the main ideas here on the slide, let me emphasize what I just said. Your main goal as a developing trader is not profitability. Not profitability, not profitability, not profitability. Your main goal as a developing trader is consistency. Is consistency of trading, of having a greater reward relative to risk. And that's why all of the developing traders I work with keep detailed statistics on their trading. How many winning trades they have, how many losing trades they have, average size of winning and losing trades, how much heat do they take on trades on average, how much favorable excursion do they get on their entries. They work with a platform that gives them those statistics. At SMB, the platform is called TraderView, and you can look it up online, TraderView, TraderVue.com, online, and you can see the kind of performance statistics that you get day after day after day after day that tell you, are you doing well? Now, when you're journaling markets, you're looking at the question of what information led to the idea. In other words, what told you that this is a profitable opportunity? I work with a number of traders who will actually keep track of that information and tag it as in a database and track their P&L. So each idea that they trade, each trade that they put on, they tagged the information that led to that opportunity. What told me this was a good opportunity? Was it something about where the moving averages were trading? Was it something that was a fundamental catalyst, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And they tag that and they track their P&L, and over time they look at which tags are most related to their positive P&L. That gives them an idea of what kinds of variables lead to their best trading. So they're identifying what goes into good ideas. When they journal markets, they are tracking opportunity and what goes into opportunity, and they're becoming better and better and better at identifying what sets up, what are the setups that lead to my best opportunities. Can we go to the next slide? Now, when we journal trading performance, we are looking at our ability to take advantage of those opportunities. So we look at things like the quality of our entry execution, which gets at that issue of how much heat do I take on my trades? Do I get into trades? Do I execute at good inflection points? The traders I work with become very good, not only at journaling their ideas, they journal those inflection points that tell them these are great opportunity points, these are great risk reward points for getting into trades or getting bigger into trades. Journaling their trading performance also reviews the sizing of their positions and how they size positions. Do they enter with larger size and scale out for profitability? Do they add to positions as they go their way? They have rules around how they size positions, how they manage positions, how well did they follow those rules? And finally, their management of the trades and management of their risk. How good a job did they do in managing the upside and the downside? Many traders I work with, particularly at SMB, will quickly take profits when a trade moves their way on a portion of their position. They ring the cash register on a piece of the position, and they let the other piece run to a more distant probable target. So what they're doing is building cash flow in the trade and creating a win-win situation where if the remaining piece falls back and goes back to entry, they can scratch that piece. But if it goes to the target, then they take an even larger profit. All of that is learned by journaling trading performance and by reviewing trader performance and continually benefiting from the lessons gained. Next slide. Okay, now here's a big idea. There's a dual focus to journaling. The first is learning from our mistakes. Okay, we mess up. That's a learning opportunity. We don't want to become frustrated and upset when we make mistakes. Of course, we're going to make mistakes. We are fallible. We are human. But we want to always have positive learning P&L. We will not always have positive trading P&L. It'd be nice if we did. We want positive learning P&L. But then the other focus of our journaling is studying our successes. What did we do well? How did we do it? How did we come up with this idea? How did we size this position? How did we manage this trade? You want to study your successes, because that's what ultimately builds your best practices. Next slide. So we use our journals ultimately for accountability. We use our journals ultimately for performance enhancement and goal setting. Two kinds of goals. Goals to correct our mistakes, goals to build on our successes. So we always, day after day after day, we always have two sets of goals, two types of goals. Goals to get better, to correct our mistakes, goals to continue doing what we're doing well. But that is not enough. This is a major point. That is not enough. We have to translate our goals into concrete objectives. In other words, we have to translate our goals into specific activities that we will do to make ourselves better. The analogy I sometimes use is, let's say I have a goal to lose weight. Great, okay, so I want to lose 10 pounds. Wonderful. That's not enough. How am I going to lose the weight? How am I going to do more exercise? How am I going to eat more of the right foods? How am I going to eliminate the wrong foods? I need to create concrete objectives to reach my goals. It's the same thing in trading. We could say, okay, I need to get bigger in my trades. Great. How in the world are we going to do that? Are we going to size up larger initially? Are we going to add to positions as they go their way? What will our rules be for doing that? It's not enough to have a goal. Just having a goal is having a good intention. Good intentions are not enough. We know that at New Year's time. We need to have specific objectives that put our goals into practice. That's what gives us accountability. Next slide. Okay, bottom line. Great journaling is part of deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is where we routinely perform, review our performance, work on improvement, and review again, and continue, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. The model that struck me when I was growing up, I went to school and I was involved. I played basketball at the school I went to. It was a school that happened to emphasize basketball, called Duke University. And at Duke, they would, in the locker room at the end of games and after games, they would review film of the games, and we would watch the film, and the coaches would stop the film, and we would look at what we had done right, what we had done wrong, and they would freeze the film, and you would see, you would cringe, where you didn't get position for the rebound, or where you didn't play ball you man defense, where you get between the ball and the man, and where you let the man get the ball in front of you. The film would stop then, and you would have to reflect on how are you going to do it differently. And then once you had reflected on how you do it differently, you would work on that in drills during practice. And you would drill it day after day after day, and you would put that into practice the next day. That's what deliberate practice is all about. That's what we want to do in our trading. Great journaling accelerates our learning. It's a tool for learning. Keeping a journal is our way of learning, but it's also a path for our becoming great as traders. And with that, Anthony, I will pass it on to you. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end, but hopefully this gives you a few things to think about regarding the role of journaling in your trading and journaling in your trading psychology.
That's awesome, Brett. And you're also going to be around to interject with some of the things I'm going to run through here in part 2. Correct?
Oh yeah, I'll be smacking down everything you say.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Exactly. We got to keep it fun, man.
That's right. So that was obviously Brett's part 1. We heard that. I'm going to get into part 2 with some specific areas to journal and what tool to use that with. If you don't know who I am, I'll show you or read this pretty quickly. You'll get a sense. I was a CME clerk in the 90s, became a Board of Trade, Chicago Board of Trade member and trader, and then couldn't make any money. I was in the Dow pit. I was hired and ready to quit the industry, but electronic trading was coming to the U.S., and I got a job at one of the bigger Chicago prop groups called International Trading Group. And I created this tool called the Verbal Journal, which I'll get into in a few slides. It's a very simplistic way to execute a lot of what Brett's talking about and a lot about what I'm going to talk about in this second part. And then part 3, again, I'll cover what that Verbal Journal is as a tool. I want to talk about reviewing what you preview. I want to talk about why it's important to understand why you have support resistance, and then also how to miss less winners. All of these things are important and some specifics I want to go through. Now, why to journal? If you haven't seen any of my webinars, I usually show this image ahead of all of them because all my webinars have the common denominator of why. And in this case, for this topic, why to journal. And I show this image of my family. That's me in the top left, my dad here in the bottom right. I'm not the tallest in my family, but my dumb brothers and sisters don't know that I stand on my toes every time we have a family picture. So it appears that way. But I'm showing this image because he would always tell us growing up, if you know how, you'll have a job, but if you know why, you'll be the boss. If you know how, you'll have a job, but if you know why, you'll be the boss. I can't tell you how many times I heard him telling my older siblings that, and how many times he told me that. And I'm the youngest of all of them, so I picked up a lot from that. So why to journal? Like I said, good journaling equals good review. Going over missed trades, why that's important. Going over how you could save time. How you could talk about your pre-market bias and actually quantify it. And how that all leads to confidence. There's one thing about confidence is you're not going to get confident unless you're consistent. You're not going to get consistent unless you're confident. So let's go through this linear progression of some simplicity and specific trade journals. Missed trades, like I just spoke about. Think about this for a second. Dr. Brent mentioned a couple journaling tools that are out there, and they're great. The one thing about what you go over, as far as stats go, stats that are trades you took, you get your average winner and average loser, your record, all kinds of great stuff. But you can't crunch data that you do not have. And that's what missed trades are. Missed trades, and I'll go over what these colors mean in a second, but missed trades are trades you didn't take. However, think about this next quote. Many of the trades you take were influenced by the trades you just missed. How many times, you don't have to answer in the chat, but think about this for a second. How many times did you miss a trade? It was an effortless winner. Everything fit to your idea. You were supposed to take it. Self-doubt, fear talked you out of it. Would have been an effortless winner, and it forced you to take a poor trade for the next trade. Think of the difference right there. Think of the difference between those two sequences. Instead of having one winner, no losers, you have one loser, no winners because you missed the winner and took the loser. You wouldn't have taken the second trade had you not missed the first trade. But if you're not documenting this in a simplistic way, there's a lot of cracks this information falls down because they're not in your trade logs. They're not on your statement. They're not going to be crunched, and that's data you're going to miss. But it's such an invaluable influencer on what you do next. Events, trades, everything. And I'm not saying you don't miss losers. That's why we tend to miss a lot of trades when we're not trading well. Because once in a while we miss the loser and we say, oh, good, I'm glad I didn't take that one. even though you were supposed to. So missed trades is a really important specific area that you need to document. All right. The next one, pre-market ideas. And again, I'll tell you what these color dots mean in a second. Pre-market ideas. How many people spend time, some a lot, some a little, and there's nothing wrong with it, you should, coming up with a pre-market bias or opinion as to what you think the market's going to do based on overnight, based on yesterday, based on your profile study, if you're a market profiler, whatever. You're bullish. First trade out of the gate, you're short. How the hell does that happen? Or you're bullish, and the next thing you know, you not only take your first trade as a short, but maybe you're bullish and you're dead right a lot. But you don't know it because you're not documenting what your opinion is. And if you are right a lot, to give yourself confidence, I got to play this thing from the long side because look on how accurate I am. And if you're not journaling appropriately and covering this, sometimes you'll get confident because your pre-market idea is very accurate. Other times you're like, why the hell am I wasting time? I'm dead wrong every time I have a bullish or bearish opinion coming in. And you could save yourself time by not doing as much work or trying to read up on what you're reading because your pre-market opinion doesn't matter. You got to wait till the gun's fired and the game starts. So these two things, there's a couple more, but these two things, documenting missed trades in a very easy, simple, and efficient way, and then also being able to document if and when you're the type of trader, and most of us are, that analyze what happened overnight, yesterday, last week, last month, in trying to create an opinion that leads to an idea that at some point has to lead to some execution. And a lot of people aren't confident and they're dead right, or they're overconfident and they're dead wrong. And you need to find that sooner or later. Is there anything you would add to those 2 points, Brett?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you're tracking your thought process and you're trading, you're tracking how you trade that thought process. The advantage of the missed trades is that you are looking at information that the statistics typically don't give you. The statistics only give you information on the trades you took. So I think, Anthony, you make a really good point that in your journaling, you want to look also at missed opportunity because those create equal learning opportunities.
Yes, well said. In trade emotion, another area that gets missed because people either, and by the way, I've done this for over 20 years in a prop firm. I've helped educate people for the better part of about 7 or 8 years. And I met a lot of people from different walks of life with different experiences and different levels of success or failure. And one thing that's very weak is review and journaling. And the reason is because who wants to review, especially a tough day, and who wants to write pages and pages on notebook paper on what they're feeling and what they're thinking? It becomes like a 2-hour workout. Yeah, it'd be great to work out 2 hours, but it's unnecessary. And you end up setting yourself up for failure when you're making something too hard to do for the long game. So another area is this in-trade emotion. What do I mean by that? How many times have you went out drinking? Someone these days took a video of you and you never thought you were capable of saying or doing certain things until someone shows you a video. Yeah, that was you. You said that. You did that. That's a lot of what we go through when we open a position, not only risking our capital, but risking being wrong, which affects people even more. So when you open a position, right before you open it, right after, and you guys could attest to this, everybody in this webinar most likely trades and has traded. And you could connect very quickly to a certain level of anxiety before your setup's about to set up and your ideas, getting ready to execute, and then how you feel once you open that position. All right. And that's what's really important is how can you be objective when you act like that? And what is that? Well, that's what you have to document. How do you feel How are you acting? What are you saying? What are you thinking? Not in a notebook 2 hours later or in a meeting 2 days later, but when it's happening. How could you put yourself in a position where you could listen to yourself in 6 months and sound like a totally different person? Because you went from an apprentice to a professional. Every profession has an industry speak. And so your self-talk has to get off your chest. How could you miss less trades by documenting why you missed it? How could you understand if you're becoming too emotional by listening to yourself and what your thoughts are when you're having them? I'll tell you a quick story. Back in, I think it was 2001, I still had the video. Before you were able to record your screen, I had an external camera set up on a miniature tripod on my desk, essentially looking over my shoulder as I was trading. And I would listen, I'd watch what's on the screen, I'd listen to myself, and I didn't go back and watch the entire video. But what I was able to glean mostly from it was how emotional I was. So Tony, who was trading, Anthony, who was watching, Anthony was a lot quicker, not remembering what the market did. I was thinking, why is he still in this trade? Why isn't he out? It's because I was filled with emotion. It's the same person. In trade emotion is really important. And many people let it go by the wayside and do not document or have any kind of point where they can go back and assess what they truly feel like. We all want to pat ourselves on the back after a good trade or a bad trade, good week or bad week, but dig down into how you truly were feeling. Another area moving along this line is why support resistance. Everybody in this webinar today and those in the future watching on recording has lines on their screens, and there's nothing wrong with it. I do too. We come up with support resistance for different reasons, okay? And I'll show you what these dotted lines mean in a second. But we come up with lines for different reasons of support resistance. But why? Can you qualify and understand context around that? Can you understand that this support is different based on today's trade than yesterday? Because oftentimes, even if you come up with a support level for the same reason, the context changes. It's not every support level isn't like the one was yesterday. And so it's important to dig into, why do I have support here? What am I looking for if it gets down here? And what did I see to make it support? It doesn't have to be a novel every time you make a recording or document it. And I'm going to show you how, with simplicity, you could do it with this verbal journal tool. In fact, I don't want you to record a novel. I want you to have 10, 20-second recordings. But what's most important is how you really are feeling and thinking about something in real time to most accurately glean and get the most help from it as you move forward. And if you look at the end of this progression is confidence. All of this leads to confidence. And the reason why is because the way and best way to get confident is to read yourself, not just the market. And so many people allow that element to fall through the cracks. The biggest weakness that I have been able to pull from other people and find out and learn, because by teaching, I've done a great deal of learning. And the one thing I've been able to pull from others is the biggest weakness in trading isn't their ability to come up with support resistance, read the market, read a pattern, read order flow, correlate markets and such. It's them. They're the biggest enemy. They're the ones that'll screw something up first. You have to read yourself. So I might allow myself to get to C, but I knew I was going there. If A happens, B is going to happen, and C is busting the mouse and trying to throw your PC out the window. You don't want to get to C, but can you find the A and the B to prevent and minimize you getting to C from a emotional disposition? Like I said earlier, you're not going to get confident unless you're consistent. You're not going to get consistent unless you're confident. And they go hand in hand. You have to learn, and trading teaches people more about themselves than I think any other industry. But why not be efficient with it by doing simple things like this? These areas that Dr. Brett touched on in his presentation, and I drill down with specifics of, you don't have to do all these things. In fact, there are people who might come up with areas that are more specific and better for them to journal. The key is to journal, though. The key is to document it. The key is to not write 50 entries a day, but at least one, maybe two, and then go back. And again, how do you know if you're getting better if you don't know where you started and where you're at and how you did last week? One of the reasons the weaknesses is reading yourself and reviewing and journaling is because there isn't a high level of accountability, because most guys and most people don't trade in an environment like Brett and I are used to, where the high level of accountability is your risk manager, your fellow trader that isn't going to let you off the hook, or Dr. Brett working with a trader. He ain't going to let his traders off the hook. But we tend to do it when it's just ourselves. So you got to document what's real so we don't go down the path of least resistance of always trying to congratulate ourselves and making ourselves feel good. But
Anthony, can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you're bringing up some really good points. And just to jump in, yeah, it's so important to know what your edge is in financial markets. What do you see that other participants don't see? If you are completely consensus, if you just look at the same things as everyone else looks at, what are you going to do that's unique? Why would your results be uniquely different? So what is your edge? If you take a look at my blog, the Trader Feed blog, you'll see an example of edge, and it gets at what Anthony's talking about with respect to support and resistance. There are points where sellers will sell, and can't push price meaningfully lower. Or buyers will buy and lift offers and can't raise the market meaningfully. And you can take advantage of those opportunities. You'll see it on the Trader Feed blog. That for me is an edge. And knowing that edge and having studied it, having lived it, that's what gives me what Anthony is talking about with respect to confidence.
100%. And there's the common denominator among the professional background. And by the way, proprietary firms, if you don't know, is essentially, to define it the best, is the venue of professional traders, mostly day traders, but the venue of professional traders, a very elusive part of this business, because I got news for you. I mean, I'm on YouTube and I tweet and everything else, but professional traders don't just hang out on YouTube or Twitter or any. They're part or have been part of this group that talks about the concepts that are almost exactly the same. Like what Brett was just talking about is a way to read order flow by asking the right questions. For instance, I create the metaphor, what he just explained, when buyers come in and it can't rally, sellers come in and it can't break and it was supposed to. That's a head scratch moment. I create the metaphor. If I punch a guy in the face with all that I have and he doesn't flinch, my ass is running the other way. When I was younger, I used to stay and get my butt kicked. Now I'm smart, I run. That's the moment, or the moments you're looking for on a chart when you see and put yourself in a position to read buyers and sellers, to put yourself in that position. And if you miss it, but you've seen it, document it. So a great question I got during this is Raul asks, what's the best way to journal an automated trading system? And in part, it's what I'm going to show you guys with this verbal journal tool. In fact, let me advance the slide. Now, what is this verbal journal and how does it fit to kind of everything we talked about? Sierra Charts has become one of the more popular platforms. In fact, Brett, you use it now as well.
I do.
Yeah, and it's not just it's like less for more. It's not good because it's inexpensive. It might have used to be like that 5-10 years ago, but they have come a long way, and it has nothing to do with price. It has everything to do with functionality and the simplicity. So you're looking at a chart of a Sierra, just a simple candlestick, and I just wanted to keep it simple. It's not the exact kind of chart I look at, but I wanted to make it familiar and simple to people. What is this verbal journal? Simply, there's a button on your Sierra chart when you have this tool VJ, and it's green here in the upper or on the left side of the screen share. When you click it, a dialog box like this pops up. I'll blow this up in a second so you can look at it. You put in a title, you hit record, and you start talking. You hit close, and it goes away and a dot appears, whatever color you made it, wherever you clicked on the chart. So real quickly to Raul's question, if you had an automated system, but you wanted to collect thoughts about what was going on when that automated system was firing, you put your thoughts in a spot that's relevant, time and price, when it happened, what you had to say. And so when you click this button, this dot rather, that box comes back up and you play back what you recorded. And again, you could set the colors to whatever you want. And so when you look at this blue dot here below, that could be a missed trade or good support that you're trying to highlight, and you could play back that particular recording. So how to use it, I'll blow up the dialog box, we call it, and this is exactly what you see on Sierra charts. You put in a title, you hit record, you start talking. Obviously, you have to have a mic. Believe it or not, there's one guy I had buy this, won't mention who. He emailed and says it's not working. And I said, do you have a mic? And he says, no. I said, well, let's start there. So just simple stuff. You change the color. You could determine if you want a line to come off that dot. The line only goes to the end of the session. Simple. It's all about simplicity. And it isn't, you could record as long or as short of commentary that you want. And then you set the colors to what, if it's a missed trade and you see a lot of those colors, you could kind of determine if you're missing a lot of winners based on that color. If it's the identification of a support and you want to articulate certain support and the price action around it, you do that with a certain color. And so there isn't a whole hell of a lot we have to talk about with the functionality, but it's about, forget about this promotion a second. I actually want to take this into, let's see if this works. I want to take it to a live chart a second. Let's do this.
Could I jump in for a second?
Absolutely, as I'm changing. Go ahead, sir.
Good. You know, you showed me this a while ago, and I felt that this was an important innovation. And the reason for that is because the journal is in the chart. We usually keep a journal that's separate from our charts. Now, we could create images that we put in our journals. Great. But by putting the journal itself in verbal form inside the chart, we integrate the visual processing of the information on the chart with the information that we talk aloud. And that integration of the visual information with the conceptual information is a higher level of integration that can help our learning. So I think this is an important innovation.
Thanks, Brad. It's simple. Like 12 years ago, I had this idea, and it was just simply sitting around two traders. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if when you clicked on a chart, let's say right here, because I had a thought at the time, I had the thought, and a box came up, you recorded your thought. Let's do it. Let's do a test. And you made the color whatever you want. Let's make it pink, and you hit recording. So the idea was, wouldn't it be cool to be able to do this? And both of these guys says, wow, that would be awesome. Where can I get that? I says, I don't know. I just had the idea. It took a while for me to actually have it created, but I wanted to make sure it was just simple. So if you stop it and you hit close, there's the pink dot exactly where I clicked on the chart. So now when I go to click it, the box reappears with the title I made it, and we can go back and play it. In fact, let's listen to it together. We go here, and you guys should be able to hear what comes through my computer. The idea was, wouldn't it be cool to be able to do this? And both of these guys says, wow, that would be awesome. Where can I get that? I says, I don't know. I just had the idea. It took a while. So you close it anytime. It's easy to delete. Once you delete, it's gone. And you go on from there. So that's the way the simplicity on how to use it and how quick you could use it. You could be in a trade and you click, already have preloaded titles, which is cool because you don't have to type every time. You're not going to have a different title for every one of your notes. And so you don't ever have to type once you get yours put in here, and you go and you select one of them. And let's just say it's a bullish today because of your pre-market opinion. You go ahead and record. Or if it's in trade, you go ahead and record and you let it go. You hit stop and you hit close, and the button or the dot will appear. You have to make a recording. That's why the dot didn't appear. You have to put a title into it, and you have to make a recording, or it's not going to, you don't want to have empty dots. That's why it doesn't appear. You got to make a recording. You got to put a title into it, and it saves it to your PC, and it brings up not only on the chart. You don't have to have it pull up on all your charts. In fact, you don't want it on all your charts. The only charts that you load the indicator on will the dots appear. So different time frames, different charts, candlesticks, bars, footprints, whatever, you'll be able to have them. So just for example, we'll look at, this is, I believe, today's. Here was a note that I made with some support that got drawn in here for me. You click it, good support. Watch this the second time down, especially the peak tool, because on the first time they had a lot of stuck sellers. And see if you can get some longs to peak down in here on the second test of these 56s. So I actually put a line to it, so it continued throughout the day along with this green line, but it was a note that I put that I seen that set potential support. And you could hear that I had, said the same things Brett was talking about with stuck shorts. That's what I want to see for support. I want to see selling come in, and price cannot go down to qualify your support. And so that's an important feature of this tool. I had my nieces in my home office, and they put these pink dots in here. They were saying, "What is that, Uncle Tony?" And I had them create some dots, and that's where these two up here come from. But I'll have yellow dots that are just an alert. I remember doing one or two today where it's just what I was thinking in that particular moment. This was the NQ. Combination of the NASDAQ finding some buy stops. We were looking for buy stops. So we don't have to listen to all of it, but it was just to, again, find what you're missing. And everybody in this business, and you guys could attest to this, when they get introduced to this business, Brett and I were fortunate not to have to learn to trade just from the internet or anything else. We started the right way, the first way, in professional venues and environments. But the point was, and the point is that you don't want to, you don't want to get into buying a bunch of indicators. I think people get stuck doing that. Red lights, green lights. When do I buy it? When do I sell it? And then they come to the realization that that doesn't work. This is an indicator of you. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses traders have, whether they realize it or not. Eventually they realize it, but in the beginning they don't. And so that's what and why this is important. If you have another journaling tool that takes your trades and you put text onto it and it draws really nice graphs and everything, good for you. Use this in concert with that so that your text is more efficient. You can go back and listen to what you want to write in that particular, for that particular tool that some people already have. So this isn't an either or tool for journaling. It's a in addition to, and it just allows you to get started and finish the whole progression with journaling because it's easy and it's simple and there's no excuses. Like I said, you don't have to have a desk with all kinds of notebook paper, and then you can't throw the words on the chart to really find out, why the lines were drawn there for you, or why you felt this way or that way. You can't take the notebook paper and throw it on the chart to see what actually happened when you felt that way. So that's a really important element to this. I could go and throw and show you all kinds of different ways that we use it. I have a trading room in the morning. I take a poll as to whether we're bullish or bearish, and then I'll plot that just to get a sense of like what I told you earlier. how many times we have different colors on a daily, if we're bullish or bearish, and these colors mean different things. And it ain't about being right. I said, what's great about the poll is when everybody's overwhelmingly bullish and we open up and we turn bearish, that's great information, because most of the rest of the world was probably bullish when the poll is overwhelmingly bullish, right? So you could tend to see a reversal take place, because that's generally when you get a deep correction or downside, is when everybody in the market was bullish and it starts going against them. They're not good at getting out. And so the next thing you know, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It also,
Anthony, can I jump in here?
of course.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. One thing I want to caution, based on my work with portfolio managers, people attending today's webinar could get the impression that because you are including the verbal journal entry into the chart, that everything you need to know to create a good trade is in the chart. That obviously is not true. The chart can provide you with some good indications of risk reward, but many times your idea for the winning trade will come from information that is not simply contained in a candlestick chart. The portfolio managers that I am currently working with have been very focused on the combination of monetary policy and fiscal policy, and the degree to which both of those are propping up an ailing economy due to the COVID situation. And so that has created flows into speculative markets, which we're seeing most locally in terms of NASDAQ performance. So they are developing their big picture ideas based upon fundamental factors, monetary and fiscal factors, but then they use the chart to structure good risk reward on their entries, and they can use the journaling, the verbal journaling, as a way of evaluating the degree to which they get good risk reward on the entries for their ideas. So this type of journaling can be very effective even if you are not gauging your ideas based on chart patterns.
Well, it goes back to charting yourself and your own feelings in that added dimension, but excellent point. A couple questions that I'll jump to. People are asking where it is on Sierra. It's not on, well, it's on Sierra, but it's a tool that's developed that you could go to the website, verbaljournaltrading.com, and I'll pop that link, or maybe Anthony could do it in a second. But the promotion he asked me to run is there's not a monthly or yearly charge like I normally do for this group. What we'll do is you buy it once and it's yours forever. The updates that we're doing, and there's one that I'm not going to talk about just yet, you'll have access to. And then what we do is I'll have some Edge meetings. Edge is my other business, but also for Verbal Journal customers come into Verbal Journal only webinars. And so now look in your chat box. Anthony is going to pop that link in there. Don't run off to there now, but that's how you can get access to it. And Sierra charts make it really easy with the button to be able to use it. And there's an easy instructional manual that you'll get once you order it. But like I said, the simplicity is what we're going after. It's not to recreate the wheel and to jump into 2-hour workouts. It's to get yourself in a position to do some of the things and some of the areas that we covered here in today's session, but a tool to actually start implementing it without, number one, costing an arm and a leg. Number two, having to do all kinds of work just to document important stuff. And that's what's really important. One question, and I'll go through these questions because we've got a few minutes and I don't want to keep Brett any longer. But if you guys got questions for Brett, ask them and we'll go through them. The notes are kept in a WAV file. So if something were to happen to your Sierra charts, you still have a backup with those notes that you'd be able to pull back up. Ian, yes, it does. Any questions? Let me go back up here, Brett, and see some of the previous questions.
Sounds good.
Here's a comment from Mike when he talks about when I spoke about qualifying your order flow, or not order flow, but your support resistance levels. For example, he says when your resistance gets taken out and becomes support. Sometimes that's not a level that you had. A lot of the stuff that I look at, Mike, and I think people could also connect to this, is levels that are created after the day starts, and to document where that level comes from. Another guy liked your point about knowing your edge, Brett, needing the confidence. What level service or service level you need in Sierra? I believe any of them will work for this tool.
I'll add an editorial comment here. Yeah, no one reimburses me. No one pays me for my participation. I never accept that. I want to always be able to be as honest as I can, straightforward as I can with the people I work with. Sierra Chart, let's be honest. Sierra Chart is not the most intuitive platform in the world. The menu system and options can be challenging to navigate. That being said, the options available, the ways in which you can look at markets on Sierra Chart really are outstanding. There is no way they or anyone else could pay me enough money to say that. I say it because I've checked out different platforms, and this is what I use for myself based on rational evidence. And the Sierra Chart platform allows you to track not only price action, but what's inside the price action, such as the participation of the buyers versus the sellers, the upticks versus the downticks, and integrates that on different time frames. You'll see that on my blog. So I found that to be a very useful platform. And then when we add the verbal journaling to that, well, then that takes the review process to a different level.
I just added the name of the website, verbaljournaltrading.com, to the chat, along with support at Verbal Journal Trading. If you have questions about it, feel free to email those there. Also, I'll post the, let's see, Brett, your Trader Feed blog spot.
Yeah, traderfeed.blogspot.com. Yeah, very nice.
For you guys to stay connected with Dr. Brett. And let's look to see if there's any other questions. A big group in here, so there's a lot of comments, a lot of questions.
How many people do we have, Anthony? It doesn't show on my platform.
137.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the highest, but that is what we had the last time I checked.
Good. Yeah, it was probably 800 before I started talking. Just saying.
Somewhere around there, no doubt.
Yep. But one point I was trying to make on the chat that didn't go through to everyone is that the broader goal is to become the best possible version of ourselves that we can be. And yes, we do that in our training. We also want to do that in our personal lives. Who are we at our best? What are our strengths? What do we do well? How could we make the most of those? That's really what life is all about, is developing the best of who we are, to become the best version of who we are. And trading is just one path for actualizing that vision.
A couple guys are thanking us. So wonderful listening to you guys.
Good,
Thanks,
good,
Mike.
good.
Thanks, Jim, and everybody else.
My
Any other
early
questions?
study, so I'll open a kimono a little bit, Anthony. My early study when I was in college, I ran one of the first 4-credit college courses in the philosophy of a novelist named Ayn Rand. And if any of you have read her novels, The Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, you know that she tried to portray a vision of an ideal human being. She tried to convey a notion of human greatness. We may or may not agree with all elements of her philosophy. I certainly do not. But that vision of greatness, of what we can become, of what is possible to us, that's really the important thing. And all these details about how we trade are just one path for achieving that greatness. There are many other paths in our personal lives and in other occupations. So if I had to frame one takeaway for our listeners, it would be to think of yourselves greatly and to think of what you can do to actualize the greatest possible version of who you are.
I like that. Where was that from again?
The work of Ayn Rand?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
So,
what I was asking.
yeah, if you look up the book, The Fountainhead, you'll find out about her work. And but the broader point is that we have a vision of who we are and what we can become, and that mediocrity, getting by, is not good enough. We're meant to do meaningful things in our lives. We're meant to do important things in our lives. Life is way too short to settle for second best. And so I encourage everyone listening to think about their path toward their greatness. And maybe it's in markets, maybe it's in another area. And if I could help you toward that path, I invite you to be in touch.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end it. You guys have his the link to further reach out to Dr. Steenbarger. Brett, it was awesome doing this with you, preparing for it and doing it. I think it's reached out to a lot of people, and we'll continue to do it. And I think that's where the greatest value comes, is from the whole notion of, by teaching, you're learning, and there's always not an ulterior motive. Sure, there's something that I'm selling on here, but it's not a promise. It's not do this and you'll make a ton of money. It's invest in yourself without spending an arm and a leg. And you either see the value in it or not. And I think even with this verbal journal aside, there's a tremendous amount of value with the content that Brent and I shared. I want to touch on a couple things with stage 5, but before I do that, Brett, I'll let you run.
Okay, sounds good. And I appreciate the opportunity to both Anthony's for getting together. And I look forward to staying in touch with our attendees. Thank you very much for this evening's program.
Dr. Brett, thank you. All right, sounds good. So real quick, this promotion, because a lot of people maybe weren't or didn't understand it, generally the cost is annual. I've waived that. You buy it once and you have it. Now, what's important about stage 5, I said this at the beginning and I'm going to say it at the end, and you guys could read through their bullet points, is that there's 2 keys to a broker. Most of them are salesmen selling trading accounts. The difference, and this is what's important about getting to know the guy who's at the top and owns it, like Anthony, is a normal person who actually cares about his customers being successful. And I know a lot of them might say that, but what are the actions behind it? And one of the things that he's added to this bullet point here at the bottom is working with Sierra and Sierra Chart users in a support role. And most brokers won't help with the platforms that they have and that they offer. And yet stage 5 does that. And it's another dimension of their service that you don't find, along with some other things. They also launched their new website, sierrafutures.com. Anthony told me to make sure you guys knew about finding out with this double nickel pricing that they have at sierrafutures.com. But he also added this client-services at s5trading.com as a place and a way you guys could reach out to them. Anthony, if you want to put the links in the chat box so everybody has it. But I can't say that enough. When you have a broker and when you, if you have one and you're with stage 5, you know this. I'm not telling people to switch, but there's always people that are like, I can't get through to someone. They don't respond. One of the key things, the key tell is if you're inquiring about a service and they don't get back to you, what does that say if they actually get your business? But I know from my experience that most brokers don't know anything about trading. They just know trading accounts, and I'm not disparaging the industry because there's several really good brokers out there. And it's just an added dimension of having a normal guy that isn't a fill and bill type of businessman or woman. And that's few and far between these days. Going back to journaling, whether you guys invest in this verbal journal or not, just understand the importance of investing in what you're thinking. Stop thinking about the best or better support level or a better profile or chart or periodicity. Are those things important? Of course. But most important is the weakness that I'm telling you I found out many years ago, especially working with so many traders on different levels. The biggest weakness is you. When you're trading poorly, it's you. When you're trading good, it's you. So do your best to keep it simple and learn as much about yourself and your weaknesses and strengths. Play away from those weaknesses or make them strengths and play towards those strengths. And most people can't identify with it because they miss the first or second step early on in their process, and that is themselves. So I can't stress that enough. I hope I gave you guys my email, support@verbaljournal.com, support@verbaljournaltrading.com. I might have forgot to add that part. It's kind of important. But the most important thing is reach out to Dr. Brett or myself if you got questions. You're watching this on recording in the future, still use those links. Again, for Dr. Brett, it's Trader Feed. Blogspot.com. You'll see him on Twitter, verbaljournaltrading.com. And then for Anthony, sierrafutures.com and all the stuff that they have to offer. As we're wrapping up, Anthony, if there's anything, all right, Tom, you're welcome. And everybody else that's thanked Brett and I, it's our pleasure. If there's anything else you want to add, Ant, just type it in and I'll cover it. If there's any questions, I'll look through it to see if there's a couple that I might have missed. Like I said, there's a lot of people and a lot of great questions and comments. Let's see. Walter, I'll let Anthony answer that question. Tyson, thanks. I'll tell him. All right, Andrew, the endorsement has the happy coincidence of being true. That's what's important of any endorsement. There's no ulterior motive, but I like this on Sierra, this verbal journal. There are things that we're actually doing that you're going to want to be a part of now. I can't get into what that is because with development, if anybody has any experience with development, there's no such thing as a deadline. I've come to learn that, not being a developer. I've come to learn that being around it for a very short period of time. So if there's anything else, Anthony and the Stage 5 guys, thank you. They're awesome. You guys have been great. Had a good attendance. Everybody stayed, so they must have liked it. We are recording it. We'll post it probably to my YouTube channel. But Anthony and whatnot will handle those particulars. Those that are watching this on a recording in the future, you obviously know where to find it. You've been watching it. Especially in this period of time, the summer 2020, most importantly, besides journaling and trading and everything else, is just keep yourself safe, keep your family safe. It's a pleasure talking to you guys today. Have a safe rest of the night, good week, and hopefully we stay connected. Thanks, Ant. We'll see you guys.